Windows, it's 96.5%, and we on Mac, we are nothing. In that big list, there's about 10% of integrated GPUs that can game fuck all. So this effectively doubles our relevance. We have more things to consider, and this is very serious. I'm not trying to make fun of people. Despite being a tiny minority, we are spending more than double. I'm really not trying to make fun. There's no funny pictures. I'm not trying to be funny, but this is in the US. Alright guys, so today we're going to talk about how big are we, right? The Mac gamer. So it's a question that I've been looking at for a long time, like, are we a tiny minority or are we big? Well, obviously we're a minority, but how tiny of a minority are we really? And I keep seeing on Reddit and on other discussions, people reference the Steam hardware survey, so we're gonna look at that. But it's not painting a clear, honest picture, right? So we are going to look into why precisely here. So here is the Steam hardware survey for November 24. All the screenshots are from today. So if you look at it, then yeah, it paints a real clear picture, all right? So especially if you look at the basic OS level, like Windows, it's 96.5%, and we on Mac, we are nothing. I mean, not nothing, but we are very little, even less than Linux, right? It's a joke. And at service level, you could think, well, all right, that's it. It's not needed to make games for Mac, right? So it's just a tiny percentage of people, and that's it. Now, obviously, this doesn't take into consideration people that are using virtual machines or crossover, but we don't have numbers on crossover users. We simply don't know. I'm gonna bet it's not a lot, actually, but still, they count as some kind of a Windows user. But what we do have is some common sense, right? So entertain this for a second with me. The most common used CPU speed on Steam is 2.3 to 2.7 gigahertz. That is slow as fuck. That's ancient, all right? Now, why does this matter? Okay, now we'll come to that. So here are the most used GPUs, which all look good, and it's much longer, and I'll save you the time. I did the math, I counted it, and roughly 76% of modern GPUs on the Steam platform are capable, probably, of AAA gaming, but not really, because in that big list there's about 10% of integrated GPUs that can game fuck all. I mean, x86 CPUs suck, and their GPUs are just garbage, right? They don't count. So that brings us down to 66%. But then there is a big pile of old GPUs in that list that are just shitty GPUs, right? So in the first page, I mean, which are very old CPUs that are worse than the M4, or yeah, just old and bad, right? They don't count for AAA customers. They don't buy that. And I've double checked this. I've actually went over to AAA modern new games and I checked the reviews of hundreds of people, right? And not everybody puts their specs in their profile, but a lot of Steam gamers do. And it paints a real clear picture, right? It paints a picture of a lot of people that buy the good new games have especially these GPUs in a profile, but even higher tiers. Like more often than not, you see the 3080, the 4080, the 4090, believe it or not. They are very common. Of course, just a few people that I saw. But so what does this do? This effectively doubles our relevance, right? So I mean, half of the GPUs on Steam, almost half, are not capable of AAA gamers, so they're not really relevant, right? If you're bringing a new AAA game, I mean, they can buy the game, but they cannot play it, so it's of no importance to you, right? And this is a side note. The Steam hardware survey is painting a very wrong picture, like 1080p, that's the most used resolution. Like, yeah, but no. If you look at the people that buy AAA new games, then the most common resolution by far is 1440p, actually. And it's quickly followed up by 4K, which is almost 70% the 4040p, and then it's 10 or 15% for 4K, and 1080p is a tiny minority. But that is among the people with the good GPUs, the 4090s, the 4080s, the 3080 Ti's. These GPUs are, some of them at least, right? So there are a lot of 60 tiers, which are more, and even they more often than not have a 1440p display, right? So, but the thing is, Steam is free and everybody can make an account, and everybody may have some ancient laptop or some computer from his or her dad, right? And that muddies the water of these stats. And we're not done yet, because we have more things to consider. And this is very serious. I'm not trying to make fun of people, right? So, but we have to consider economics here, all right? So due to the world economics, which I do not control, nobody controls, right? Roughly 60% of all Steam consumers are simply financially unable to buy fully priced AAA games, right? And I know they do buy them, but they need subsidization in the form of localized pricing. So a game for you and me is 80 euros or $80, and for them it's 20, right? And that's fair, but it's not helping the company, right? It ruins their income. So this alone, roughly 10 volts are relevant on Steam, right? We have much more buying power than more than half of the Steam users. It's because we are mostly concentrated in America and Europe, okay? Because Apple products are expensive. You don't buy them in a lot of these countries. And by the way, Russians cannot even buy anything. So 10% of Steam users is unable to buy anything due to sanctions. So that's a quick loss of customers, right? Now, again, I want to iterate. You cannot choose where you are born. This doesn't make people who cannot afford or need localized pricing, like in Turkey, etc., any less of a gamer than you and me. It doesn't, right? But these stats are relevant for Apple's gaming ventures, right? So, and why is simple, because Apple's stuff is more expensive. And so we can look at this Android versus iOS market share. So this is in 2024. We are a tiny minority over there. We are about 30% worldwide, right? So 70% of people, most people have an Android phone, believe it or not. But still, we are massively outspending those 70%. Despite being a tiny minority, we are spending more than double on games, in-app purchases, app purchases, you name it, whatever. And why is this? Well, we've been over this, and again, I'm really not trying to make fun. There's no funny pictures. I'm not trying to be funny, but this is in the US, right? So this is in a developed country. The average iPhone user has a bigger income than the average Android phone user, right? And again, I'm not trying to be funny, but this is what these stats do. And why does this matter? Well, it matters because it's easy to say, oh, well, 1.4%. Well, we're really not, because half of Steam's GPUs are unable to play modern games. So we are already at 2.8 just because of that. Then there's some crossover users, so let's say 3%, right? Then there's just a situation of world economics. And as we all know, the App Store doesn't do sales and doesn't do localized pricing. So it's full priced or nothing, which is good for the developers. But that effectively 10 volts are present, right? So effectively we are about 20%, maybe more, in buying power terms. Of course, not in raw numbers, but that is very similar to the mobile market share, right? Now you do have to tap into that potential, right? So nobody is spending much on games. Now we all know they flop on Apple Silicon or on the iPhone. Nobody is really trying to get our money, right? So the App Store, I mean, I'm gonna be honest, it kind of sucks, right? I mean, it has a good refund policy, but it sucks. You cannot find your purchased games. It has tons of fake reviews. It's pretty bad, okay? Something needs to happen. Apple needs to make a gaming store, or Valve needs to take us seriously. And so I want to make another small point quickly here, which is Nintendo Switch versus Mac sales, because Apple did themselves kind of dirty here, okay? So since Apple Silicon, which is about 2020, I counted it, they have sold about 112 million Apple Silicon Macs, okay? Now, that sounds like a lot until you realize that only until recently they started to come with 16 gigs of memory, and the 8 gigs are severely handicapped, gaming-wise at least, but also in general, okay? They can game, but it's just like the Steam GPUs where half just goes away. It's the same for Macs, except it's worse. 95%. Basically, all the effort almost all of this is garbage. They cannot game AAA. So what I just said, we are 20-25%. Yeah, that's a good cope. We are back to 1 or 2%. And that is purely because of Apple's goddamn greed. And they're doing it again now with the Mac Mini, with the 256 gigabytes. It's not helping any gamer. It's so low. I checked Steam. By far, people have 1 terabyte, right? And 200 gigs unheard of. But anyway, the Nintendo Switch, a console dedicated to gaming, you cannot do anything else on it than gaming, sold more units than Apple Silicon Mac. So we are still a tiny minority, right? But not by choice, because some of us want to game, but we are stuck with the 8 gig models, just like Steam with the hardware. And some of us can game, but you know, nobody makes games for us. So we are bigger, but we're also small. It's funny, we are in a super position right now, and it's up to Apple. So the 16 gig base model, it's great. In 4 years' time, maybe when they have sold another 100 million Macs, we are finally becoming a real presence for bigger games, right? But if they keep up this greed of 200 gig Macs, then it's just hopeless. Honestly, it's hopeless. They need to make a gaming Mac, 1 terabyte, 16 or 24 gigs of memory, and just sell it at the lowest price possible. And make a Mac gaming store and charge 30%, do it, recoup the money, milk us dry. You know, every company is gonna do that, right? So anyway, guys, that is how big we are. So we are back to square one. We are tiny, and that is because of Apple. Okay? All right. Have a good one, guys. Bye-bye.